first pitch was hit right back to the mound. In the Phillies' first, Boa at bat.
Line drive, that's a hit off the bat of Larry Boa. Staub cuts it off. Boa's out at first base with a line single.
Well, I want to welcome everybody back to my podcast, my 47th podcast. I'm there with my cousin Vince back in Jersey. Here I am in California for another edition of Talking with Cuz. Welcome back, Cuz. I know you had a little bit of nice little vacation down to Mexico, and how was everything down there?
Beautiful. Considering it was 85 degrees there, and it was 40 in the Philly, Jersey area. Can't complain.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. So, yeah, it's great. So how this came about is that about a couple of weeks ago, I know with this new real ID, everybody needs to have this new ID, and I'm not going to get a new driver's license for a while. I figured, let me go and finally get a passport. I haven't had a passport in almost 50 years. But lo and behold, I thought I had my birth certificate, and I could not find anything. So I'm here in California. I still have boxes that I've been dragging around for almost 40, 50 years. Philly memorabilia, books, things, and whatever. And I went through a lot of things. And I go, oh, my God, look at this. Look at that. So I figured, it'd be a good topic rather than get into politics and the normal stuff about, Philly current sports, but the era that we grew up with. And actually, it'll go back, that little introduction that I did, that was now 54 years that the Philadelphia Vet opened.
The first thing I think of when I see that is not that was the opening. Of course, it was the opening game, and that we were there
the next
day after a Flyers 6-0 pasting to the Blackhawks. But the first thing I think of is when the stadium was going up, we would walk across from the Spectrum, and you'd see the fence that at the Vet that you could look through, and you could see the progress of the stadium. So was it a year in advance, 4 months in advance? But that's the first thing I remember. There you go.
Speaking, you shall ask.
That's the construction. Yep.
Well, that had to be almost 69, 70 because that was still coming up, and you'd have to have the fence around it. But we don't remember this, but I saw this picture of our beloved little mini arena.
Oh, the Spectrum.
Yeah. That went up in like 10 months, 11 months that was finished. Yeah. But yeah, it's wonderful how, we ended up having those great memories from back in the day, and then, having going to the Flyers games, having our season tickets. So I figured let's go down memory lane in a little bit because some of the things all the memorabilia that I found, and actually I'll have to start. I don't know, where do I want to start? Most of the time I would buy programs. Sometimes I would buy the program. So I'll start here back in 1972, 73. That's was
the media guide.
Yes, that's the media guide. And some years they had some really interesting things in it where they had the pictures, players' pictures really big or real small, but
I love the stats.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best. I mean, it would give you the previous year, every game they played, the score, who scored the winning goal. I love that.
Yeah, it was a different era. Everything was print. There was no TV like it is today, or no cell phones or anything. And let's see. So
remember, here's mine. This is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, put it back a little bit more. That actually goes back to 1985, the year that he.
But this was purchased only weeks before Pelle Lindbergh died.
Yeah. Now, people who don't know, Pelle Lindbergh was the great heir apparent after Bernie Perrant and everything in the early 80s as a great goaltender. He took them to the finals in 1985. They did not win to Edmonton, but he did enjoy his cocktails. And living in New Jersey, and the team lived in Jersey, and they practice at the old Coliseum in Voorhees. That actually had restaurants and bars. And that was when I was single, I was going out, and he would be seen at the bars a lot of times and not well, pretty hammered. And I guess that one night he took a couple people and, there's that road. You've been there. There's that concrete little, the road turns to the right.
Yeah.
And he kept going straight. How two people survived out of that is still
That's
a miracle.
exactly what I thought. He's the only one that didn't survive.
Right. Yes. And he was on life support for like 6 hours until his family finally gave the okay to finally pull it. But that was a tragedy in that regard. But no, we're not going to go anything really bad. But that building was really special to us. It was our second home. And then I think the Philadelphia Inquirers in the late 70s published this great, today it was in the Sunday paper, and it went maybe 2 or 3 pages and going through, how the whole operation was done. And you could see that they were going in, and that was the highest, technology at the time with a message board, wasn't an instant replay or anything, but then how it went. So it was kind of
analog. I mean, it was just,
yes,
you get 2 minute the penalties, and that was it. The score and time. That was pretty much it.
At the time, it was the most advanced one in the NHL in sports. So, I think when I saw this is really kind of cool, and how it, the green clock. And actually, the green clock, when I went to the arena with my dad said, because it was always on the far end. He's like, "What are you looking at?" So I was just amazed by the clock had green bulbs in it. I don't know why. But anyway, so yeah, that's the cover of the Action magazine. That was the Spectrum magazine that would come out every month. And this is the 10th year anniversary, 77, 78. And would go through a whole bunch of things that building endured, and it would show 4 days of action at the Spectrum. And us working there about 10 years later, we ended up seeing, changeover behind the scenes. It was truly an amazing way to, and then they would have this picture here about within 36 hours. That's when they still had track. Look at the lower left.
Yeah, I see that. I'm trying to.
They still had track.
Obviously, I guess Philly must have some sort of indoor.
Remember if they used to have in February the track?
Remember tennis?
Yeah, they would have tennis in the February and an indoor track tournament at the end of January all the time. And this was another cover of another issue, but I probably will be using a lot more of this with. Russell Peltz is the boxing promoter in Philadelphia. He promoted all the boxing tournaments in Philly that were at the Spectrum. So there's some other pictures about that. So that was a really
I never got to boxing there, but I did get to wrestling.
Yes, we did.
Best thing working that. Oh my God, got to go behind where the lockers were, and you see the bad guys hanging with the good guys. It's like
they've been asking, where are you going to go for dinner? Well, we're going to go here. All right, we'll meet you there afterwards. Then they got to get mad and whatever. So there were some good times and there were some structural problems at a certain time of the year in late.
Gee, what would that be? Look at that.
February 18th, 1968. And they had 11,000 people getting ready to watch the Ice Capades. And it was really heavy wind and rain, bad weather. And evidently, they didn't put enough. You've been in, engineering. You've been facilities management. They probably didn't put one coat, one thing down of roofing, and it ripped the whole roof off. And talk about, they had so many public outcry. They were demonstrating. But then this is another picture that was in that magazine about showing the construction of the Spectrum, the roof blowing off, and the lower right. The only really picture of them actually getting ready to start putting up the third level in 73.
And how did the attendance change, Carl?
Well, from 14,646 to 17,000 for hockey, and that, hey, more income. And, Ed Snyder was good. They didn't know if they were able to do it. They had the structural engineer come in and they said, if I build it this way, it will support a third level. So, So yeah, I'm not sure what this one is. So okay, this really goes to that same year. Now, with my dad in construction, this is actually a personal thing here. That summer of '78, evidently they needed to replace the ice making machine, so they had to dig up the old concrete, take out the old coils in there, and put a whole new one in there. So for that one month edition, they actually took pictures. They didn't interview anybody, but they had pictures about it. My dad told me about it. I wish I was there that day to watch it and to be able to take pictures of it, but he wasn't able to do that. So this is pictures of them actually. They actually ripped up the floor, the concrete floor. Now they're actually welding, or not welding. They're trying to just dismantle all the piping and all the steel that's already in there to replace
the rods and all the coils. I mean, that.
Yes, and you can see the trucks, the dump trucks picking up all this stuff. So I think it was like a whole month operation. But my father was called there to be able to supervise her because he had experience in putting ice rinks in. So let's see what we got here. This will show you them laying out. They're all the coils that they put the Freon through. That they put
is that cold, or is that the rods? Because look how they bend, and I mean,
well, that's the rods, and then they actually put the coiling in between that, and they run the Freon through that, and it freezes. So, my dad. This is when they're actually pouring the floor. This is when they were starting to use a laser screed to make sure everything was level in the building. But I would show this to him every once in a while because he was a purist of the business. So there's one picture, and you see the workman smooth out floor surface. Well, you don't smooth nothing. You're using a trowel machine to finish the. You ain't smoothing shit. You're finishing it, you son of a bitch. So, all kudos to my dad. Did great work. You can see lower left, one trowel machine, a second one, and third, fourth, fifth. So they worked almost 10 o'clock at night to getting that surface exactly.
That's really a cool picture, though. Just seeing the arena like that.
Yes. So, people don't realize how the building went up, how it's maintained. Remember back, or my pet peeve was, oh, they're going to have a basketball game later on. They're going to melt the ice and put this court. No, you're not going to melt the ice. They have the insulation boards go on there. So.
Remember, people would think, oh, the ice has to be a foot thick. It's like 5/8 of an inch. That's it. That's what
exactly. Exactly. It has to be at that certain temperature and made sure. And, now that having sports, hockey in Florida and Arizona, because back in the day, look at Buffalo, no air conditioning. You look at the Blazers' first game, that the whole units weren't working. It was slush. They had to cancel the game until it finally got it working. So
and you threw your puck out on the and
well, speaking of that, Vin, that first game, I actually went. They had the red pucks, but then I bought a program. I actually got the signature on there, autographed by. Say you say it better than me by his name. Go ahead.
Andre Lacroix.
Andre.
Andre Lacroix.
Yeah, he was a great player for the Flyers, a great player. But then this new league, the WHA, opened up and started, where their money came from, we're not sure, but they were getting all of some of the good players, for huge salaries in there. And what's the trivia on that team? Where did that franchise didn't really even play a game?
The Miami Screaming Eagles.
Eagles, yes. They didn't have how can you have a franchise when you don't have an arena? So we need an arena for this? Yeah, morons. So the guy in Philly brought it up there to Convention Hall, and that was opening night, and they never actually played the game. They had to give you were able to go when they finally made it up, but that's Bernie Perrant when he left for money. And then I did not realize that their big signing was Derek Sanderson. I thought I had the one in the whole Blazer regalia, but it was his contract, $1 million.
$1 million, and he didn't earn it with the.
He played 20 games. That was it.
And then they traded him,
the Vancouver. The whole team. They went after the first year. They went to Vancouver, and then the whole league folded after that. But that's where Gretzky came out of that WHA with the Indianapolis
Racers.
So continuing with hockey, we're from the South Jersey area, and I barely remember this.
I don't even remember this.
Eastern Hockey League that Mike Schmidt, the great all-star of the Phillies, kind of was like a little token owner. I think he really didn't want to be involved with it because I think they were under. I don't even think they played at the old Cherry Hill Arena. That was after the Jersey Devils went somewhere else or folded, whatever. So I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, but I remember. See, what I remember when you said the Eastern League, I'm thinking Devils, Johnstown Jets, Long Island Ducks,
right.
Syracuse Blaze, all of those teams. But by 79,
this was the league that really was good. This team sold out Convention Hall. This was, after that,
Philadelphia Firebirds, coached by Greg Peeling.
Yes, I went to many of these games at Convention Hall. And they sold out like 9,200 people there for at there, and they thought they were going to be big. I said, well, it's the East. It's still a minor league team. It's not the NHL. So.
As a trivia question, do you remember who the Firebirds beat that year to win the championship?
No, that I don't.
The Beauce, Beauce, Jarrows, Jaros. And I remember looking up, what the heck is a Jarrow? I don't even remember what it is. Canadian team.
That I don't know. It's I know some certain things, but not everything. So yeah, and that's part of the things that I ended up still carrying around with that. And we did a fantastic podcast a year ago when the Flyers won the Cup on May 19th, 1974, the 50th anniversary. I'm sure we'll talk about the 50th anniversary of their second Cup. But we also mentioned that night, myself, you, and my cousin Garrel Basili went back to the arena to watch this. I'm surprised.
Indoor lacrosse.
Yes. And get rid of that. But you actually thought it was, you realize now who they played?
I thought it was the Maryland Arrows. That's what's in my brain. Maybe I just saw another game, maybe on TV, because they were on TV a lot.
Yes,
and that's where the league was great. They didn't wear helmets back then. And they would throw haymakers, and I mean
Carm Collins,
Zenny Lipinski, John Grant, the Lloyd brothers. I mean, John Grant was 6'6", and he would do those behind the back shots. They were a good team. They were entertaining.
Yes, they were. But we would go to quite a few of those games. The only thing I didn't have, remember they had the indoor soccer? I didn't have anything from the indoor
Philadelphia
Fever. Yes.
And Fred Grigorov was their big star.
You remember the names.
I liked indoor soccer.
I loved it. We went to the ball because they only had that regular glass. Because we were behind one of the goals, and Dan thing almost took our head off. It was going to.
Of course, the flooring, the carpet, the rug.
Oh yeah,
but it was like ripples in it. They just can back then have.
Remember, it was like the cheap Christmas, green, like they put it on the tree.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the cheap stuff. It would get waterlogged or something. Something would happen to it. So
no, I just think the way it was, the adherence wasn't great in certain spots, and it would start rippling.
But it was because we read practically anything that they had there. It was great. Hey, you want to go? Yeah, let's go. So obviously, have to get the yearbook of the Flyers winning their first Cup, and then their second.
Don't nauseate me.
And they're still the greatest player of all time for that franchise, and finally they got some good luck there to get him in that second round because he would have been great for any team, but we're lucky to have had him. Then on a somber note, there was a goalie that was pretty decent. This is before they really got good. But then I bought this program for posterity, and it's just
Bruce Gamble.
Yeah.
He was mostly better known for his days with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And why is that, Carl?
Well, because that was back in the day when we remember they didn't wear masks, and we would always love to watch the Sunday afternoon CBS game of the week. So you were at my house this particular Sunday, and it was Toronto at Boston. And he was in the Nets no night. And I don't think it's on the internet, but there was a shot by somebody who's got deflected and hit him right in the, he was a little bit more, didn't have as much hair as that face look, and it cut him. But he stayed in the game. Then he stayed in the game. He didn't come out.
Hey, he stayed in the game that he had the heart attack.
Yeah, so allegedly, but not allegedly, really, because I'm coming home. It's a Friday night. I was out, and I have the game on radio, and I hear Gene Hart saying, "Well, Bruce, it doesn't look, yeah." And he stayed in the game while actually suffering the heart attack.
And that retired.
And they flew from Vancouver to Oakland, and then he went to the hospital, and they said, "Hey, you're lucky you survived. You just had a heart attack," and he never played again.
Yeah.
And then this was the night that they did some kind of a special service for him, and blah blah blah. So because the Flyers were always great with their players, and especially Barry Ashby and all that. So it was.
Bruce Campbell wasn't a great player, but
he was adequate. He was a fill-in. That was before they got good. That was before they brought Bernie back and all that. So let me see what this was. So yeah, getting back to the TV, and we had the Gene Hart and Stuart Nahan, but there was a couple of years there before they really started getting great that they had Pat Shetler and who else? Who was the other Playboy?
Yeah, I'm struggling. I can't believe Mary used to say Falstaff, the beer that came east over the west. That's the guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, can't remember.
Yeah. So anyway, but this was the original.
Oh my God! Look how young.
Yeah. Well, people who don't know that, that is actually Stu Nahan.
Captain Philadelphia.
Yes, but back in the 60s, they would not just do sports. He had a children's show, Captain Philadelphia on Channel 48, but he was a great announcer. He was the first, and he was a CBS announcer for that first national broadcast. And then he became, widely internationally known for being in the Rocky movies, calling the game, calling the fights in the Rocky movies. But was this one? Yeah, there it is. That's when Gene was with Don Earl. This is 72, 73. Because I think 70, 71 with Pat Shetler and, oh, geez, we can't remember the other guy's name.
I'll get it. I'll remember it. But back then, they would alternate periods. Like Gene Hart would do the first.
Yes. That's why when Clark won the game, he did the overtime. Because Don Earl was doing the play, or Don Earl would have been doing that. Remember, we would be going home and listening to WCAU, and then it's a Ralph Lawler goal.
Ralph Lawler.
And years later, when I moved out here, he was
San Diego. Wasn't he?
He just retired. He was just going to retire for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Wow.
So that was really interesting how that turned about. So
I got a question for you, and you'll know it, and I don't remember.
I got an answer.
So when they're doing the games on TV back then, games were on radio, right?
Well, yeah, it's separate. There wasn't a simulcast. They had a separate.
Who did the play-by-play?
That's Gene would go and do you would see that with Pat Shetler and Don Earl, and Gene would be doing the radio.
Forget about that. Stanley Cup years. How'd it go?
No,
go ahead.
No, that was a simulcast.
Exactly. Okay.
That was simulcast those years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Hey, at least you didn't bring up WCAM 1310.
Well, that's real beginning. It was Spanish up until 8:30. And then Sunday, it was only Sunday nights or certain nights, and then it would be like game would start at 7, and the first hour and a half would be a Spanish channel, and playa hockey, and then you're Gene Hart, and like I said when we did on our podcast, he wouldn't give the score for like 2 minutes. What's the score? What's the score?
He'd give you a recap.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I figured out the Flyers are losing 6-0.
Well, I'll never forget the time that, it was that Thursday night. He didn't give a recap for almost 7 minutes than when Burrison was scoring 6 goals, St. Louis against them. So
I recall for that game. I remember it because I went to I was in LaSalle High School, freshman or sophomore year, father-son communion dinner, whatever, and we're coming home in the car, and that's what I got to listen to is Red Berenson, on the way home.
I was going to put because one of the magazines had, action shots from low. But remember back, even the bulletin and the papers, they would always have an arrow showing where the puck was. If it was in the net, it was here and there.
I remember the famous one, we talked about it, was they were playing their home opener against the Canadians. It was probably 70, something like that. And the Flyers were losing 1-0 to the Canadians. And Gendron scored with a minute left to tie it. And they showed you the arrow from where the puck was on the stick and going into the net.
Well, I always remember, I think it was the Flyers always play the night before Thanksgiving. We used to get a newspaper, and Detroit came in and beat the Flyers 6-3 or something. But so how Gordie Howe scored a goal from the back of the net. And actually they have like not an arrow, but they have like, the like broken line.
Broken line, yeah.
Yeah, around that how it gets and Favell was just like, he just missed it.
What's interesting though about that thing about the arrows and all, I remember this had to be mid-60s. They would show you on Sunday a touchdown pass of 60 yards.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd show you the quarterback and then the arrows all the way to the guy catching it.
Yeah, they did the sports too for the Eagles, yeah. So keeping with television. Now, one of the UHF channels in Philadelphia that actually went out of business, the whole corporation went out in 83. But reason why I'm showing this live and in color, they actually had to promote the games in color. Like, come on. Like, really? Nowadays, like, but then, they're.
Wait a second. What year was that, Carlucci?
Here?
Yeah, what was that? What year was that?
Well, that was their first 4 years, I think they were on.
Right, so 67, 68. Color TV was not every house, but I get it.
Right, my dad got our first for the first Super Bowl. Yeah. That was 67, 68. Yeah.
And it wasn't a Super Bowl. What was it called?
The Championship Series.
Yeah, the War of the Worlds. You're right.
It wasn't the Super Bowl till the third year. Yeah.
That's right.
And give kudos to my, stepdaughter, Julie, who passed. And back in the day when she was younger, she remembers seeing any show that she saw on black and white, she would look at me and say, they were the olden days, right? Because it was the black and white. And now you look like, Andy Griffith or any of that stuff. To us now, it was the olden days. The Beatles first time, on Ed Sullivan and all of that. So let me just see what that is. Oh, yes.
Oh, God, please.
We loved soccer. We loved all kind of sports. And actually, I don't know if I have anything. Actually, there was a soccer team in Philly in the late 60s, early 70s called the Adams. No.
Before that, Carlucci, the Philadelphia Spartans.
Yes.
Remember we talked about Al Meltzer broadcasting?
The Quagmire in Baltimore.
Guess what? When I was in Mexico, I've read the entire Al Meltzer book, and he talked about what he loved doing. You know what? I should have saved the book for you because he was a sports freak. He was from the Syracuse area, and he couldn't get enough of sports, loved every sport. And he went there when Jim Brown was at Syracuse. So, but oh man,
what was his big football call?
OJ breaking the
2000 at Shea Stadium. Yes, but then when he came to Philly, he loved it. He goes he loved the Sixers and loved the Big Five.
Carl, you know what I learned from the book though? The one love he had that he wanted to do, and he came close to doing it, but it fell through, was broadcasting baseball games. And at one time,
I never knew that.
When he came back to guess what? Here's an Al Meltzer trivia question. He was a sports broadcaster who broadcast in Philly for 5 different TV stations. Al Meltzer.
Yeah. Channel 3
and 17.
He never was on 6. Al Meltzer was.
Yes, he was. Not that long he was.
I don't remember him
3,
ever on
6,
Channel
10,
6.
17, and what else might there be? I don't know about 29,
29 or 48
5 stations.
Well, we
And
always
the best thing he ever had was broadcasting with NBC. Jessica Savage, Vince Leonard, Bill Custer, and that crumb bum.
And you can just tell he loved what he did. You know,
he loved doing the double headers at the
yes. What was his always got? Yeah, with
hello there.
Yeah, hello there, and then Howard Porter and all that with the Big Five, and then the
Carlos,
Sixers.
Remember you said about Channel 6? One of the things he mentioned. Remember Les Kiter doing the games on Channel 6? Yes. Les Kiter was the sports director.
The Channel 6 had the game.
Meltzer worked there under him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, the last time we did one, we showed you the picture of Jim O'Brien that was there, and he was originally a radio DJ at WFIL radio, and he got into TV. But yeah, all those legendary, pioneers as they called them back then. It was great. We loved watching it, and watching our sports. So actually, I think I had it somewhere, but it was like the Sixers beating Boston in '67, so I could go to the finals. And it was a nice little video of Convention Hall there. So, but continuing, we love soccer. There was the Spartans, then the Adams,
then the Fury,
and then the Fury for a couple of years. And then actually, there's a picture of the Fury with Vet Stadium, but somehow I found this little video. It's about 20 seconds.
But who owned the Fury, Carl?
Conglomerate of Elton John, Peter Frampton, and a whole bunch of other people that, who knows what they put into it. Because, look, Elton John still owns a British, I don't know if they may have been regulated, but he still has interest in Bournemouth, I think. And I know Rod Stewart did. For many years, he was involved with that. But, yeah, this one.
O'Brien of the Philadelphia Fury scored twice against New York, that lovely drop kick, followed by a header. When the teams changed ends for the second half, however, and the Cosmos were putting the ball in play, Bobby Smith of the Fury sent the ball into his own goal. That was all the Cosmos got, though, and O'Brien's goals held up for an upset win.
The funny thing
doesn't sound like Jim Gordon.
It doesn't? To me, it sounded like Jim Gordon. No.
Deeper voice for Jim Gordon.
Well, maybe he changed his voice for soccer. Who knows? But this is a nice little bit going down memory lane, because when you reach a certain age and you really love sports and you just realized that, I had all this stuff all these years. So one thing is I get really pet peeved now because the whole LeBron thing and everything about the GOAT and everything else. But we have to admit, thank God we watched these two guys in their prime, the greatest of all time, and you're still, somebody was saying, well, all these players that are breaking records, what records are they breaking? Wilt Chamberlain's. The one that I think he's got 135 triple doubles or one of those.
No. 30-30s, 30 points, 30 rebounds.
Yes, like 136 of them.
130, and I think he's got like 115, 120 of those.
Yeah. So I still believe
that. When people say, "Oh, here's my top 5 basketball players of all time," and they're young guys, so all they think is, "Oh, LeBron." Kevin Durant, they don't even put in like the Larry Birds of the world. Forget about Wilt.
Yeah, if you get a chance, if you ever get an HBO Max, that series about the Celtics is fantastic. With Bird.
Carl, that's interesting because I've the last 2 days found stuff on Max, and for some reason I'm getting that. So I'll look at what's it called for the Celtics. Hello. Where'd you go?
I'm here. I just put you on there. That's all.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Yeah, it's a great series. It's comes out every Monday, and they're up to the 7th one. And it goes from the beginning, how Auerbach and the Boston Celtics were formed, and the whole
what's
thing.
It called? Is there just Boston Celtics, or what do you find?
It's a Celtics It's just Celtics. You'll see the uniform, the green
All
Celtics.
right.
It's fantastic,
Got
and it
it.
goes like through every era. So I went to different games, all some good, not so good. And when I even brought this up, you even moaned. But it just so happens I did buy a program for this particular day that in Philadelphia will always be called Black Friday. And Vince, why do we call this Black Friday?
Because the Phillies went.
I didn't bother to pull up that last half inning with the Dodgers.
Phillies went into the ninth inning with a 2 or 3 run lead.
Playoff
2
game.
outs. Vic Davalillo steps up, does the best drag bunt I have ever seen. So he's on first. Then there's the fly ball to left to Lazinski with his vertical leap of 2 inches. Can't catch it. Ball comes back, thrown back in, hits the cutout at second base. So the guy on second goes to third, and the next thing is and it runs in. Then there's that ground ball up the middle. The bang play at first base. How can I forget
the shot that Smith couldn't get? It goes to Boa, and
And replay now would show that he was out by that much.
Yes,
he'd have been out.
It was Davey Lopes, and he still said he was safe.
Davey Lopes. Well, with replay now,
was there, and I have to say, my first wife Kathy, who worked for KYW, were doing the Philly broadcast at that time, so she had tickets, and that's the Bert Hooton game too. He started that game.
They riled him up.
Yes,
he walked just a bunch of guys like in the third inning,
and he got rattled. But that's the Bert Hooton game. So anyway, there was a lot of publications and a lot of things in there. I don't know if you remember this, but I had this right there. It's like, damn, the epitome of 74 with the Flyers and Dave Schultz. And then back with hockey again, though. You get all hockey news that's still in business.
I had never seen that. The Flyers winning.
You never saw that?
Never saw it. Wow. I used to get the hockey news. I think for a couple of years. I had
How come you didn't get that? How couldn't you not get that?
I probably ended the subscription before that. I don't know.
That'd be crazy.
I used to love looking at box scores. Oh, this guy scored at 1957 of the third period to tie the game. Oh, I love that stuff.
Well, actually, looking at the bottom of the advertisement on that's a perfect segue into the next thing I'm going to show.
Bobby All.
Yes. So I do not know how I ended up getting this yearbook, but they were not our heated rivals, but they were the people, the team that would come into the Spectrum that we actually had the most respect for, most feared that year.
Big Bad Bruins led to the
Boston Bruins hockey that I got you.
Boston Bruins hockey.
And we listened on WBZ.
It's good to do business where business is good. Hanover Shoes.
Yes, so it was Bob Wilson.
Fred Cusick.
Oh, my God. Here comes Bobby. Wing to McKenzie. So anyway, I somehow found this. Somebody gave it to me. I don't know how I got it. So I went through it. It was amazing. But then I had the 2 people that we talked about.
Assist number 8, Hodge. 7, Esposito. Time of the goal, 12 minutes, 11 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to show that, there was an era that goalie did have a mask on, but then the players, they didn't have helmets on. And our second best, that was really some great times. But having this and the old Boston Garden, as they said, even Stan Hockman said, it was all, no, Bill Campbell always said, Boston Garden was always a dump. So anyway. So
it's interesting, Paul, when you mentioned like the Boston Garden and you were mentioning it for the Sixers, I remember there's a game the Sixers played way back when, and they talked about a Sixer fan.
The Enforcer.
The Enforcer, that's it. The Enforcer.
There's no ever picture of it. Remember, I used to cut out pictures in the bulletin and have it. When I got married, my baseball card, all that stuff is gone. And he was a huge guy, and like 2 guys were trying to fight him. He was like King Kong Bundy or something. But the Enforcer. So I'm going to show this. And what's the significance of this?
We were there.
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Where were we?
Early April 1970.
No, late April, because everything got extended. It was like late April.
Yeah.
Right around this time. I think they extend for some reason the playoffs were later.
Well,
but then
all I
it
can
was
think about the energy shortage, but past
Yes.
that, why would they extend the season?
Yeah, or the game. Anyway, when we were there,
took a flight. We took a flight at Allegheny Airlines. How much was it? $29.
$49.
And
But
we went
we
to
like freak out our
see.
parents.
We went to see The Immigrants in the afternoon.
And I've never been able to see that anywhere.
I got 32. That's Pacer.
Pacer.
And then we went to the game that started later.
8:30. We luckily were able to get our flight home.
We met with Rick, the guy who sat below us. He left after 2 periods because he had to get back to Penn State. And you're right, we got lucky. Asked the taxi guy to step.
We had a kamikaze pilot get us back because
hey, we'll give you an extra $2 if you go there fast.
But that was because remember, like you guys are going where? You're gonna go to Pittsburgh. And was that your first flight? That was my first flight.
Wait a second. Wasn't your first flight Italy?
No, that was 2 weeks later when I went to Italy. Pittsburgh was first. Yeah, what a difference. 7.5, almost 8 hours over there. Go to another country. So let's see. What's this? Oh, yeah.
The Journal. Lasted for 2 years.
We had the Bulletin and the Inquirer. The Inquirer was a morning paper. The Bulletin was an afternoon paper. But here's another paper that came in the late 70s, early 80s to try to compete. And this is the cover of them winning the World Series 55 years ago. And I still had this son of a. I drunk it all the way out to California. I didn't even look what I had.
45.
40 now, 40 October will be 45. So yeah, the Journal. But yeah, it's kind of cool to look back at some of this, to have a podcast. So it's I don't know. I guess I don't know if kids today will have. They can't because they don't. There's no newspapers. Because remember, your biggest thing was saying, "Good paper day."
That was your line.
No, you made that up. You came up with that. That was yours. I give you kudos. Oh, it's gonna be a great paper day tomorrow. Because maybe the Eagles won or something good, and the Flyers won, and all that stuff.
And now it's like there's no newspaper, so I'll say, "Hey, let me check the highlights of the Phillies game, the Sixers game, the Fly." That's what you do.
Yeah, and then if you see that they lost, you don't even bother.
Oh, I forget it. I'll record games, but if they lose, I'll go back and delete it.
Yeah. So yeah, just as a God, we're having a good time, 43 minutes. But who knew, as we used to look through that fence, what that stadium was going to be like.
Yeah.
Now, your first time in the actual stadium was that day that we all went, me, you, and John, after the Flyers game, the second Phillies game at the Vet.
Well, you're getting me by saying John.
Johnny Basili. Because he was at
that game with us or what?
He had tickets too. I said, hey, you want to just sneak because he walked home. He was
remember they used to open the stadium, those side gates going upstairs.
No, I'm just saying, was that actually your first time in the building?
Oh yeah, well,
I dated that girl Ro from South Philly. And one day we didn't even drive. I don't know if we drove down to Argon Avenue or something. We parked the car and then walked, and there was opening in the fencing. We were able to actually walk up the ramps, and we were actually up by where the 500 level will be, overlooking. It was like, I'm looking at it, it's like, oh my God, this place is freaking massive, and how clean.
I'm not a felon like you, so I illegally went in that second game.
There was nobody there. There was no security. There was nothing.
You disappoint me, my friend.
How do I disappoint you?
Because you illegally entered that stadium.
There was nobody there. If they said you can't do this, we would have laughed. But there was other people walking around too.
At least I got to see the Great Wallenda.
That's amazing.
That was probably probably the second. That was 72, the Carlton year.
Getting in now. See when the mouth of Wells Fargo Center. See when that would open up now. I was staying at my sister's for a little bit in South Philly. And I say, oh, yeah, it's an open house for season ticket holders to see the stadium, and it's like it already was like an hour in. I said, "Oh, I forgot my ID." The guy said, "Go in, whatever." And I walked around it like before. I said, "Oh my God, this place is beautiful," and that's going to be 28, 29 years that building's up. So, yeah, it's a good old time.
For Citizens Bank Park, I was lucky. The first year it opened up, I belonged to a facility managed group, and I was part of the team that would scout out places that we could visit. And we did the art museum, some businesses. We did this. We did the Wells Fargo when it was Course but we got to do the Citizens Bank when it first had opened up. Yeah, and I thought this would be like a 40-minute thing. This was 2.5 hours. By the time they were done, I'm going, please, okay, I've seen enough to say. We got to see where the indoor batting cages were, the Diamond Club. We knew how many lights were on the light tower. I mean, it was just a cool place. And then we had the food. We had baseball food, hot dogs, burgers, fries. It was great.
Yeah. Just on a side note, that who knows if you'll ever, we ever go back to Vegas, but my dear friends were over here. They had tickets to see the Eagles at the Sphere in Vegas. He says it's absolutely insane. Now they have tours there. You don't have to go to an event, but they have tours now. Because remember, they were just opening it and everything when we were out there a year or two ago. But who knows? Maybe if you ever could get Linda out here in Vegas, I'd meet you out here at one point.
I'd love to go. Just passing by it, looking at it.
Remember that day we just went by? Yeah. I remember when during the day it was off, and it was that black metal grid. Yeah. So, all right, so what do you think is the highlight? The vet, the Spectrum, and I freaked somebody out on the trivia thing. I named when this picture was probably taken. I said it was right around April or May of 74. And you know why? I was able to go tight into this truck, that tractor trailer, that white one down in the lower right-hand corner.
Was it NBC?
NBC. That's when they had the Sunday games. But it had to be April or May of 73 or 74, because that's when they were doing the Sunday games.
That's right. CBS used to be the network.
The first years, yes.
Remember how exciting it was? In between periods, they would show you highlights.
Oh, my God, they're giving shows.
The Blackhawks in St. Louis. Highlights?
Yes. Oh, my God.
That was great.
And then they came out about a year or two later. They tried to do something like NFL Films, actually film a couple games and put a condensed version of it. I guess it must have cost them too much for the cost of film. It was color 16mm film. You got to cut it here. And now everything is so digital. It's insane. But, yeah, kudos to our good old days. And I wonder how Larry and all those, if got Larry still around. And
God bless.
We know Tom Hoffman is gone, and I know his son is still around. But they were great old days in our building.
And it was great because you went to a game and you knew pretty much who was going to sit next to you.
But the guys in the back of us, I call them the beer men. And
but it was just, people could afford, individuals could afford the tickets. Once it became corporate, it's like you don't go, oh yeah, I remember you here before.
Well, I remember our seats were went up to about 8 to 10, and then the seats that were around the box, around the benches, they were all going up to $25. Oh my God, who's going to pay? So I went to that minor league game on Friday night, and those tickets at a major league game would probably be about $1,000. For minor league, that was a nice little arena that over there in Ontario, though. But the speed of the game,
we had really good tickets at the Spectrum.
Oh, great,
relative, because you went one section over to the right. That was the price break for what they considered going toward center ice.
Yeah. And we were right there at that red line. You could put it right up through us, see Bernie. And that was a great thing because you loved watching Bernie the whole time.
That's what it was. Two periods of Bernie was worth it.
Yeah. because it was a great time. Hopefully, some people can watch this, and we're just two guys that lived the life back then and enjoy Philly sports and just talking about, because that's all we did, talking with Cuz, and we said do a podcast on it. So yeah, what do you want to do for the next one? I know we're gonna do politics. Nah, let's leave that to the other people. I'm not gonna do with that.
I was talking to somebody. I was talking to Linda, but I said, it'd be a really great podcast, but you can't do it. He's getting a couple of Democrats talking to a couple of Republicans about issues, but it would turn into World War III. It would turn into a tag team, Pier 6 brawl.
If just because they're Democrats, they don't have to. The radical left, they don't want to do it. Like our friend and my lady friend in Florida, they don't. Oh no, it's like he's Hitler, he's this, he's this. They can't handle the truth.
Well, it's just that they never debate. I'll always comment. It's always the Hitler. So it's like, can't you debate an issue? Just do that, and not just show a dictator Hitler. Talk the issues.
I said, I don't see any Hitler, golf resorts or hotels.
The big thing now is, he's spending taxpayer money to go play golf.
They're so stupid.
I know.
He owns the fucking place. Excuse my name. This is podcast.
Doesn't take a salary.
He doesn't take a salary. He doesn't charge himself to play golf.
I'll say, oh yeah, you didn't open your mouth when Sleepy Joe would be at the Delaware Shore the whole summer. That's okay.
Well, look, they're coming out with all this stuff, the deep state into the Pentagon. But look, we're drifting off to that. We'll talk about it time. And hey, we'll see. We'll come up and hey, Cuz, thanks for the 47th. I'm going to have one with Daryl that you met.
Yeah, Saturday and Monday, right?
Saturday and Monday, we're going to talk to good old Frankie Ray down in Nashville.
Then what's going to be 50? What will be 50?
Actually, I'm going to tape. Daryl will be able to do it on Saturday. I'm going to tape that, but I'm not going to play it until Wednesday to make it the 50th, And I haven't heard from Russell back yet, but I'm sure we're going to do something soon. So, Cuz, as always, I appreciate it. It's good. We always do this, and we'll be talking, and we're going to come up with another topic. But I figured that would be kind of interesting. Everything that I just had, it's just actually there's still stacks.
Now you can throw it out.
The real good stuff, I'm not, but I almost half a dumpster. Luckily got a dumpster here. So yeah, we'll be talking soon, and I'll be posting this soon. Give my best to my surrogate sister, Linda.
I will.
All right,
Same
buddy.
Okay, Carlucci. Have a good one. Watch the end of the draft.
Yeah.